had a pretty important development this week as the chair of the Fed, Jay Powell, testified up in Congress and basically said, you know what, it's more pervasive, inflation is, and it's more widespread than I had thought, and therefore we're going to have to consider at least moving up the time of the taper, something you've been arguing for. From listening to Jay Powell this week, do you think he gets it?
I was glad to see his testimony. I was glad to see him advocate retiring the word transitory from the inflation discussion. I wish it wasn't necessary, but given reality, I'm glad about what the chairman is saying. Here's what I think he needs to recognize next. If you look at what is in many ways the simplest indicator of the posture of monetary policy, where is the real interest rate over the next 1 year as inferred from market inflation expectations and market interest rates, that number is at its lowest ever. That number is now way below negative 3%, closer to negative 4%. That is not a tenable place for enduring monetary policy to be. So I'd like to see him signal that there is no reason at all for us to be engaged in continuing QE and mortgage-backed securities, that there's no reason why we shouldn't very rapidly end QE altogether, that we need to start moving in the way we do when inflation is well above target. I'd be signaling 4 rate increases next year with two-sided uncertainty depending on how the inflation figures work out. That will be a jolt. But a jolt is what is required to restore credibility, given how much monetary policy has lagged.
Larry, let's talk about that jolt, as you refer to it. Some months ago, you said your concern about the Fed is if they waited too late, if they were too dovish on this, they would have to take action that actually could tip us into a recession. Do we still have that danger? Is 4 interest rate hikes next year likely to tip us into recession?
I think 4 interest rate hikes next year are less likely to tip us into recession than 8 interest rate hikes the next year. And so I think we have got to get ahead of the curve rather than be behind the curve with respect to inflation risks. Look, I'm not saying we should lock into 4 inflation risks. I said we should be signaling that as a very plausible possibility.